Well, hello and welcome to the show. I'm glad you've joined us today. Today, Dee Dee and I are talking about spurs and spur placement and choosing a spur and what it means to you to actually utilize a spur and how best to use it. All of that's coming up on Discovering the Horseman Within.
Now the sun is rising slowly on the mountain you must climb, and the trail that takes you closer to the source. And you dream about the moment when you leave it all behind and climb up on that one true horse. That one true horse, the perfect partner built to ride. One true horse, a bond that cannot be denied. You would search forever just to have the chance to take a ride on one true horse. I'm gonna take a ride on one true horse.
As I talk about spurs, there's a lot of things that I like to talk about. One of them is how to choose the right shank on the spur for yourself. What is the shank of a spur? Well, right here, this part of the spur, we call that the shank, and that holds your rowel, okay? And a common mistake that you see is people with short legs with a long spur shank, okay? So if you look at Dee Dee and I've got probably about 4-inch longer legs than she does. So here's an easy rule of thumb. The shorter your leg, the shorter the spur shank should be.
Stand up.
Yeah, that's right. You get high heels, your leg's still short. Okay, the longer your leg, the longer your spur shank should be, because if your leg is short, you can't get it out of the horse's rib cage. It's always there. So then if you've got this long spur shank, you're always spurring that horse in the belly, constantly your leg's just banging on him. If you're real short, or if you're real tall, rather, your leg hangs down below his belly and you have a hard time getting back to his belly to cue with that spur.
Right.
So you ride with a longer spur shank. If you're like me and you sort of have medium length legs, then you take a medium length spur shank and that's what you utilize. That way it's easy for you to get your spur out of your horse, but relatively easy also to get back to your horse. What do I mean by, what's the difference in short, long leg and medium length? You know, if you're 6'2" and you wear 38 or 40 length jeans, you probably need a long spur shank. If you wear a 36 length jean down, you probably need a medium. And if you wear a 36 length jean but you only need a 30 length jean, then you probably really don't
need to grow?
Yeah, there you go, you could grow. You really don't need a very long spur shank. So that's one of the things right away that I think is important. And the shape of the shank is sort of personal preference, okay? So yeah, if you'll hold that. I like kind of a gooseneck on my spurs to where they've got just a little arch right there. I think it allows me to roll my spur, which we'll talk about a little bit later, a little easier. Some people like a real straight shank. Some people like a shank with a small amount of curve or a sideways spur and roll it sideways. Some of that stuff is personal preference.
Okay, so I'm hoping to take you back a little bit further and say, I seem to meet people that either they live in their spurs or people that say, I do not ride spurs at all. I don't know how to use spurs. I don't know why to use spurs. Can you help?
Well, I'm one of those people who lives in my spurs, and you're one of those people who doesn't really care for your spurs. And to me, a spur is like, you guys know I can't email or text barely or anything. And when I sit down in front of my laptop and there's that keyboard, which confuses me anyways, if I just start pushing my hand on the keyboard, I have no idea what's going to come up. Now, I watch Dee Dee type and her hand hovers over the keyboard and all fingers move, and that's great. Mine move like this, like 1, 2, you know, A, B, whatever. So I push intentional buttons with my finger, single finger at a time. That's the way I look at my spur.
Okay.
It never should be used for forward movement, nor is it really a corrective tool. It is a way to type cues into my horse's rib cage as he becomes more finished. If he's lazy, get yourself a dressage whip or an over and under, because what's natural for that horse is if he gets bit on the tail, he's going to jump forward. If my horse doesn't like your horse, what's he going to do? He's going to pin his ears. If your horse doesn't move, he's going to bite him on the tail. your horse is going to jump forward.
Okay. Right.
So if I've got a lazy horse, I want to go back to what's natural and bite him on the tail and create forward movement. If you watch when you engage your spurs into your horse, the first thing he does is suck his belly in and lift his back up. Okay?
Right.
That's not forward.
Right.
That's up.
Right.
So my spur sort of encourages
we don't want to
collection.
go up.
No, we don't want to go up. No. Okay? My spur sort of encourages collection, lifts his belly, helps him round his back up, and then moves him one way or the other from there. If I just want him to go forward, then I want to whack him on the tail with an over and under or a dressage whip. And I mean that when I say whack him on the tail, I want you to squeeze with your legs, and if nothing happens, you should use the dressage whip on the ground first and make sure that when you spank him, he's not going to buck. But once you've done that, squeeze with your legs. If nothing happens, spank him on the tail in a way that makes him move. And if nothing happens, increase the pressure and the frequency until something happens. And as soon as he moves even a little bit, release it. Instantly reward him for trying. And pretty soon your lazy horse is going to be moving really well and you'll be loping all over the place. And you'll have done it without your spurs.
Right, without ruining that leg cue.
That's
you would
right.
have saved that.
And you see people who say, oh, I see, you'll talk to folks who say, oh, I think people get bucked off because they wear spurs. That's probably for one of two reasons. One, they either use the spurs incorrectly in like a punishment form, and the horse was more than they could handle when that happened, or they used them too soon on a horse that wasn't broke. Now, I have very, very good friends who put spurs on the very first ride, and they ride with those spurs every day of that horse's life. That works well for them. They understand their spurs, they know where they are, they're an extension of their leg. And so that's one of the things that I tell people. People will say, I am scared to death to use spurs, I don't know anything about them. Good, because that's the way you should be. You should be scared to use your spurs. You should use them sparingly.
Right.
Okay, so we have an exercise that we do with all of our students where we set you down on a chair or a stool in the arena, smooth the dirt out, and I want you to close your eyes, hold your feet out vertically in front of you, close your eyes, and lower your legs until you think the tip of your spur rowel is touching the sand. And what you'll find lots of times when you open your eyes is that the spur rowel is buried under the sand. And I want you to practice that exercise until you can just leave little tracks in the sand with your spur. What that's doing is it's adding sensitivity to your legs. And you're learning to feel the tip of this spur. When you put the tip of this spur on the back of your boot, you've got a big chunk of leather and a big chunk of steel between you and that horse's hide. That horse's hide is more sensitive than yours. So that spur should tickle him. There are two kinds of people that use spurs. There are jabbers and rollers. Okay? A jabber tends to jab that spur in and make something happen. I tend to be a roller. I take my spur and I lay it against my horse's leg or against my horse's ribcage, and I just roll my heel up and let that spur come up that horse's belly and motivate him then. Because again, I'm not looking for force. I'm trying to hit a specific button, okay, in a specific place.
So when you roll your spur up, you probably have your heel extended, and all you have to do is just tip your foot up.
That's right. And we'll talk about that with horses here in a couple of minutes.
Okay.
We'll bring some horses out here and go through some of that. Okay, now one more thing that's really important in the structure of your spur, and that's the choice of the rowel. Okay, the rowel is the part that spins or it doesn't spin. Even if your spur is solid, that's still the part of the spur that's really important. If you've got a ball bearing spur, then that's still the part that's really important. I prefer a rowel that spins loosely and is about the size of a quarter. So these spurs right here spin really loosely. The rowel is about the size of a quarter. There's frequent dull points so that certainly it's not just a quarter. It's a little more severe than a quarter, but not much more severe. I like that. Dee Dee's rowel is about the size of a nickel, much smaller. How do I know if a spur is severe or not severe? What I like to do is I take the spurs and I put them in my hand like that. And then I will squeeze them into the palm of my hands, just like that. And I feel which one hurts worse, okay? To a certain extent, the larger the rowel, the less pressure you're applying because there's more points of pressure per square inch. The smaller the rowel, there's less points of pressure per square inch, and so it actually applies more pressure.
Right.
Okay? So I like to do that to test that and say, all right, what do I do? So a lot of times I'll see people with a real small rowel that's real dull on a kind of a medium to long shank, and they think that that's a pretty nice rowel. The truth is, it's actually adding a lot of pressure in a hurry.
Right.
Where sometimes you'll see somebody with a 2-inch rowel, and you'll think, oh my goodness, that's terrible. But if it's got a lot of points all the way around it and they're gentle and smooth, it's actually much softer than that little roper spur that's so popular. All right, so now if I've got a 2-inch rowel that's only got 5 points and they're sharp, all right, now I'm just stabbing my horse with a dagger. Okay?
Right.
So I've got to be, again, very cautious. And it's important to understand that just because somebody uses a more aggressive spur rowel than you doesn't mean that they're actually more abusive to their horse. They may use that rowel a lot less because of how much more aggressive it is. They don't have to use their legs very much. That might be the purpose. On the other hand, they might be one of those people who overuse spurs. There are certainly those people in the world, and I don't mean to say that there are not. But those are basic structures of your spur that I think are pretty simple to understand and pretty important. The bandwidth, I like a 3/4 inch to 1 1/4 inch bandwidth. I like a big heavy spur. Dee Dee's got a little bit smaller band right here. Hers is down about 5/8 of an inch.
I don't want that much weight hanging off the back of my foot.
Right. I like a big heavy spur. She wants a little bit lighter, softer spur. That has nothing to do with how it affects your horse. That's the comfort of your heel.
Right.
Okay? So that stuff isn't really important. The importance, shank length and rowel choice. That's what's really important. Let's go ahead and get some horses.
Sounds good.
Here's a little spur tip for you. Lots of things are personal opinion. This is one of mine. I like to take my buckle and put it on the side where the silver is. That means that my buckle is to the outside, so when I'm walking, I'm not going to catch my buckles together and trip myself. The other thing, for those of us who live in our spurs, how do we get them on and off easily? Dee Dee, go ahead and pull your boot off. I've got Dee Dee's spur here. All right, so what I do, I just take my boot, shove it through, spurs on. Likewise, if I want to take it off, spurs off. That fast. That way, I don't feel like I gotta unbuckle them all the time. I know you're like, wow, that's the epitome of lazy, Ken. Actually, it is. And it's things like that that make your life a little bit smoother, a little bit faster, and you get through it just that much quicker.
Okay, we're ready.
When I use spurs on a horse, I wanna make sure that I'm actually utilizing the spur itself. A lot of times I'll see people kick their horse from the knee down and backwards. Just go ahead and move your foot backwards. Okay, like you were gonna kick the horse, okay? Do you see where that spur connects, okay? It's actually not connecting. A lot of times you'll just take that foot and you'll kick here like that, and that spur never connects. What happened was your heel hit the back cinch, and then people will think, oh, my spur is ineffectual. You're not utilizing your spur. When you use a spur, I want you to turn your toe out like this, okay? Now, when you get ready to use that spur, I want you to push your toe down and roll your heel up. Dee Dee, just go ahead and do that until it just barely touches that horse. I want that spur to touch that horse and roll up right there, okay? All right, so that spur should mean something when it connects right there. Now, we talked about spur position and typing on that keyboard. So I want to talk to you about that for just a minute. What I like to do, turn your toe out and run your leg all the way up here for me, okay? From right here, just behind that front cinch, forward, in my mind, controls the shoulders. From right here, just in front of that back cinch, back, controls the hindquarters. Right here in the middle, that's the region that I'm going to use. Go ahead and relax your leg. That's the region that I'm going to use to control the horse's rib cage. Now, those three positions can be changed to mean a lot of different things. I can move within those positions several different places and ways, and what that's going to do is change what my horse does. So maybe if I reach back here, go ahead and just reach back and put your spur right in front of your back cinch, okay? Maybe right there, I'm going to use both spurs like that to help this horse round up. Maybe I'm going to move my foot back a little further and just move his hindquarters over, okay? You're going to determine what that spur means to your horse. Okay? And then here's the important thing. Once you make that determination, you're going to enforce it until the horse begins to realize what you're talking about. Sometimes you'll see people when they get on their horse, they'll want to reach way up here. Go ahead and reach up here. Turn that toe out. All right, that's a great maneuver if you're a saddle bronc rider. You see how straight her leg is? Sit up straight. See how straight her leg is right here? Get that toe turned out. Right there, okay. Now, there's nothing that you as an average rider are going to do with your leg up there in that position. It doesn't belong up there. If you're a saddle bronc rider, that's great. You're gonna take all the shock when that horse lands on his front end. You are not a saddle bronc rider. There's no reason for your leg to be up there. Slapping this horse in the shoulders with your spurs is only going to cause problems in the long run. It's gonna get your horse stiff in the front end. It's gonna cause you a lot of trouble. So there's no reason for it to be there. Instead, you wanna get really comfortable utilizing your leg and utilizing your spur in this region right in here, from the front cinch back to the back cinch. Likewise, there's no reason to reach back here unless you're looking to get in trouble. Because what happens when I take Dee Dee's leg, Dee Dee, I want you to put your leg back, way back as far as you can. Do you see where her body went? Okay, do that again. Sit down, just relax, sit deep in your pocket. Okay, now I want you to reach your leg as far back as you possibly can. Like you're gonna move this horse's hindquarters. Do you see what happens to her upper body? She gets thrown forward. She lifts her hip up off the horse. She ends up sitting on the outside leg, completely out of position to offer this horse any support or any assistance in anything he's doing. Your horse is an unbelievable athlete. He does not need you to sit perfectly right to do things. You can sit completely out of position and he can still perform. That said, it makes it easier for him to perform when you sit correctly. It makes it easier for you to stay on when you sit correctly. And it looks prettier in general all the way across the board when you sit correctly. So when you start throwing your leg way over here or way up here, trying to do something, every now and then I'll watch somebody who wants to get the horse to move his shoulders faster, to spin faster. They'll start reaching up here and stabbing that horse. All that's gonna make him do is say, ouch, 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 and he's gonna start getting away from what you're actually wanting him to do. Okay, Dee Dee, I want you to ride out there a little bit.
Okay.
And I want you to ask this horse to pivot over his hindquarters, okay? And so as she does, I want you to watch the inside leg come off the horse. See that spur come off that horse right there? And as she comes around, look at where that spur is. That outside spur, forward by the girth. Get that horse over his hindquarters. Don't let him walk forward. Forward by the girth, okay? Keep that horse forward, there you go. And then you see how that spur comes on, off. The spur is off right there, okay? If I just jab that spur on, go ahead and bring him back. If I just jab that spur on and I leave it there, okay, then my horse is going to start getting sick and tired of that. If that spur just is poking right here, see, he flinches from it. Now, I'm not pushing very hard. But if he can't get away from it, I'm gonna teach him to ignore it. And pretty soon he's gonna say, that's a level of pain I just have to live with, okay? I want you to go out one more time. I want you to turn the other way.
Okay.
We're gonna do the same exercise, and I want you to be real clear, keeping your foot up by that front end. When you feel that horse moving, release it, okay? Right there, that spur is released. Get him on that hindquarters. There you go. That spur is released. As she comes around there, that spur is off completely because she gave the cue. Good, you can bring him back. Don't let him fade down country.
Okay.
Go ahead and bring him back. She gave the cue and the horse started to perform. So he should stay performing until she releases the cue. She doesn't have to keep jabbing. Instead, she says, I rolled my spur into him. He should perform. I'm gonna leave it that way for any exercise. Same with a side pass as it is with a pivot. It doesn't matter what that is. In fact, go ahead and just side pass away from us a little bit. Same way, put that spur on there. See that leg more in the center there? There it came off. There it's on because he quit moving. There it's off. Whoops, he quit. There it's on, there it's off. There it's on, off. So there's a release to the actual pressure. Great, bring him back up here. Those are things that I think are really important as you work with your spur. Know where it is, be aware of it, know what it feels like, know how hard you're using it, know what it feels like in your own hand, the structure of it. Those are things that are going to change the way your horses ride in everything you do if you begin using spurs. Obviously, spurs aren't something that are mandatory or even necessary. They're simply a personal preference. They're something I choose to use because I like the way they work. If you choose to use them, I hope this was helpful for you. We actually sell spurs online that are a very mild, gentle spur that Professional's Choice makes for us. I really like them. They're a spur designed exactly off of my spurs. The rowel, the shank length, that kind of thing. And I just prefer to use that style of a spur. You use the spur that works well for you. Thank you so much for joining us, and until next time, may God bless the trails you ride.
Find out more about Ken McNabb horsemanship at kenmcnabb.com.
That one true horse, the perfect partner built to ride.